Well, guys, I have somebody new in studio today in real life. And Ross, why are you here?
Well, I came out here to check out potatoes and onions and spent a week looking at all things that Idaho does on agriculture.
Well, thank you for being here. It's good to have you. We're going to talk about a few things specific to the produce industry here on the Produce Common Sense podcast. It's good to have Ross here. We have known each other for a few years now. Oh, yeah, and behind the camera, because he's like pouting back there, Patrick Kelly is here, helping
Got a little
us put
citrus.
this deal together.
Little citrus.
Yeah. Rick, who's usually helping me put this podcast together, is gone today. So we if you saw behind the mics, you would, I don't know if you would smirk or smile or just be impressed by everything that's going on. So thanks to Patrick for helping us put this together.
Well, this was kind of a thrown together podcast on the Late Late Show.
Yeah, it is. It is 10 to 10. And we started this morning at what time? I mean, like produce hours.
6:30. We met at 6:30 this morning.
Yeah. So it was a great day.
Awesome day.
I have this. Okay, so where we live here in Idaho is Hell's Canyon is just a little ways away. I have to talk about this just for a second because the experience that you can have in Hell's Canyon is, well, how good was it? 1 to 10.
It was incredible.
For real, don't lie to me.
I mean, it was a 10. It was a 10.
Okay. I love this experience because it's, for me, this is the 5th or 6th. I don't know how many times I've done this, but every time I appreciate it, and I know that the folks that are visiting me can have like a really, really memorable event. And so,
yeah. I mean, you kind of deceived us in saying you've never gotten wet before.
Yeah, I did say that.
And then we got soaked.
I did lie. I did lie. I mean, I didn't lie on purpose, but I absolutely lied. There's no question that I lied today. I did. We all got
but it was
wet.
Worth it. It was worth it.
Patrick even jumped off a rock and did a front flip.
He jumped
we'll have
off.
to show that video. I'm sure you'll see it out there. So what can we talk about today that's going to be relevant, meaningful, and educational to everybody that listens to the podcast? And I want to talk about trade shows for a second because all of us within the industry spend lots of money at trade shows. And for those of you that are listening that aren't part of produce specifically, because I know quite a few of you are out there, trade shows the produce industry has trade shows just like every single other industry. And we have to promote and sell and market our crops. And there's a trade show coming up. IFPA will be in Atlanta in 2 weeks? Something
couple
like
weeks,
that?
yeah.
It's coming up soon. And do shows pay? From your perspective, so you're there not as, put on your hat as someone who's trying to find new growers, new shippers, new people to work with. Do they pay?
I would say they, for the most part, do. I would say specific to the IFA Global Show. I mean, it's the massive, it's the biggest, one of the biggest ones. So if you're going to see something new, vendors that may be at other shows throughout the year, save new innovation and all of that for that show. I mean, Little Citrus and I were just at a show a few weeks ago and really wasn't a whole lot new or innovative there. It was a great show, got to have a lot of conversations with folks, but a lot of people use that show specifically to launch new and innovative items. It's kind of like if you're going to
you think the showcase is meaningful?
That show is definitely meaningful for new products,
okay,
innovation, all of that kinds of stuff, because it is one of the biggest shows for the industry in the United States that we kind of do. There's a lot of other regional shows that are fantastic, but specific to that show, it is definitely the biggest. More people attend that show than any other.
I think that's worse in some ways too, though, I have to say. Because you have so many people there and so many people to visit and so many things to do that I find some of the smaller shows to be better sometimes. I'm not trying to contradict what you're saying at all.
I would not disagree with you on that.
It's an honest question because we have this question all the time internally, and I have the same question with other vendors, like whether these shows are worth it.
So I would say that show, you're going to get new leads if you're wanting to meet with existing customers and have more meaningful time with your existing customers. Then the smaller regional shows offer more of that platform.
Okay.
That show is massive. So, from my role as a buyer, I'm trying to get through and see as much as I can. So your time to maybe spend with a vendor is less at that show than some of the smaller regional shows that have less vendors there.
I like that insight.
So that you can maybe so at that show, you maybe want to spend 5 or 10 minutes. At some of the other shows, you can spend 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. So you're saying for you're scoping out new products, new vendors with new things, innovative people is kind of your purpose when you're at a show like
Correct.
IFPA. Okay, that's cool to know. Okay, all right. So when you do go to those shows, any show, whether it's big or small, what stands out? What is it that people do that you recognize, that you see, that, like, because to me, I like the smaller shows. I'll say this really quickly, because everybody has a 10 by 10, okay? Everybody has a 10 by 10, so if you have a good booth, something to show people, you can still at least be seen.
Yes.
Whereas if you go to IFPA, people are dropping 150, 200 G's, maybe more. So those of us that are spending 50 to 70, which is a lot of money,
Yes.
can still be relatively, that's like a 10 by 10 at another show. Like, it's hard to be seen. So number one, for the guys who have a limitless budget, what is it that stands out to you? And number two, for the people, like ourselves that don't want to drop 100 G's in one show, what can we do to stand out?
So specific to the global show, the big booths, obviously the food is a main attraction. You look at some of those bigger ones, they bring in a chef, they bring in a nice item because, again, you're walking that show all day long.
So you think people are hungry?
People are definitely hungry.
Okay, that's awesome.
You
Okay,
look at the booths that there's a lot of stuff around. Holy guacamole, Yokero, Driscoll's, Masternardi of the Sunset. They all have like chefs and food there. People congregate. They know the booths to go to. Idaho Potatoes that does like the French fries. North Bay, Sharon always does a lot of food there that does a ton of stuff. So, I mean, there's booths that people know that they're going to go and get fed at.
Okay, all right.
I would say for other stuff, like,
so you're saying those of us that are like giving away underwear, that doesn't count?
as long as it's not white underwear, we're good.
Okay.
Nobody likes white underwear.
All right. As long as it's not white underwear. Okay.
But people do love to get the swag, and so I think one thing you guys have done is had memorable swag that stands out. So not just a pen, not just a hat, something different that people are like, oh wow, I want to get that. So like something unique, something creative that people can find uses for outside of just that show. So what's something different that's going to stand out? And then each year it's kind of different. So.
Okay, so what about for the big guys? Because you kind of spoke to, or maybe you're kind of speaking to both. So big or small food, okay, and limitless budget. Is there something that's like you've seen a few times that is like you notice it every single time?
I mean,
I have one thing.
The Masternardi Sunset booth is massive, so I mean, size-wise, you can't miss it. So some people that have the limitless budget, they can have a big booth, and the way that show is structured, you kind of run into those,
right?
Because it's not like the smaller shows where the aisles are, it's like in a grid, and you can kind of make your way through because everyone has the same booth.
Yeah, I agree with you.
On that show, you go up and you hit that giant booth, and you're like, oh, and then you go around, and then you end up missing or to an aisle, and that happens to me every year that I go to that show. Is you try to go back and forth. I try to go in a line. You hit those giant booths that are in that section, and then you get off your line and you miss a row, and unfortunately it happens to those vendors. They get missed, not on purpose, but you do get skipped because of that.
Okay. I mean, I can see that, like the bigger ones. The other thing that stands out to me are the overhead like banners. Like when the guys pay to hang something overhead, to me that
100%.
stands out. Like you
100%.
notice it for sure.
Yeah, especially the ones that are spinning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. If you're out there and you have like this limitless budget, that's always stood out to me. The funny thing is the food doesn't. I mean, I eat the food, but I would have never thought of it as like a calling card, like you're talking about.
Yeah,
so
because
like
people
a specific call out is going to really
people have that taste and they remember where they got that from. So like each year, I know Driscoll always going to have great food. Every IFPA,
right.
I go to the Driscoll booth because I know they're going to have something delicious. People love the French fries. So you find kind of like that signature thing,
and do it year after year.
Or tweak it a little bit, make it, something different. I mean, Sharon at North Bay did blueberry cinnamon rolls at the most recent show, and then she's done blueberry grilled cheese. So she mixes it up every year.
So I want to change gears for a second because we talked about on our drive, we had about 2 hours in the airplane, and we had about much time driving.
Thank you for the plane ride and letting me take control for a little bit. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, we're still here, so we did good. Yeah, PK did it too, so we're good.
We didn't die.
Nobody died.
We got to fly for a little bit.
It was beautiful. We flew there at sunrise. We flew back at sunset.
Yeah.
It was about perfect. No bumps because it was fall weather. It's nice smooth air. So these guys had like a perfect day to go for an airplane ride to Grangeville, Idaho. Not necessarily a destination, but Hell's Canyon was.
It was.
Okay, so we talked about consolidation. We're definitely seeing on the buy side a lot of consolidation, right? Groups like yours, other groups where, the buyers, those that are buying from the growers, are getting larger and larger and larger. What is it that those groups, in your opinion, need from grower, packer, shippers like myself? What is it that we can do to be helpful, that we can do to be valuable, that we can do to maybe stand out, or we can do in general just to do what you guys and those that are consolidating and getting bigger and bigger need?
Well, we're a little unique where we still have the purchase orders come from all of the companies. And so, even though Fresh Edge is the entity that owns all of the organizations, it's still an industry that is based upon relationships. So regardless, at the end of the day, we always say the grower shipper needs to have that relationship with the buyer, because the buyer is the one that makes the ultimate decisions on a daily basis. So from a grower shipper, you want to be friendly, easy to work with, provide those value things that a buyer and our organization is looking for. So, some of them, everyone's different. Some may be looking for price, some may be looking for quality, some may be looking for fill rate. It all depends on what they're having to do for their customers. So what are their values that they're expressing to their customers? So how can the grower shipper align with their values that they're passing along to their customers? And so with those, it's knowing their end user and what are their trigger points. So if it's food service, it's going to be more about quality and fill rate. My time on the retail side, it's more about, the value, whether that's an ads, frequency, it's market opportunities that are being able to be passed along. And as a group, as the buyer and the shipper, they're able to come together with a fair arrangement and move some volume when volume's needed to be moved, and those kinds of things. Retail is really focused on those ads. So it's getting the ads, it's providing those lids, and then following through, because there's a lot of ones that will provide lids, but then they don't always are able to execute, and that can really hurt the retail segment.
Okay. So like consistency, I heard.
Yep.
Ease in process.
Mm-hmm.
Price for some. And I guess I agree with all. I sit here as wearing my grower hat, shipper hat, and we really try hard to make everyone's job as easy as possible. Like when I'm talking to our sales team, like, hey, how do we make Ross's job or the buyers, like, what is it that we're going to do to make their job as easy as possible? Sometimes that's easy, and sometimes it's harder.
Correct.
But as we look at the easy things we can do, and that's coming through, right? The consistency, like, we don't always, we market onions for other people, right? The majority of what we do is our own, but because we're a grower and we have ourselves to fall back on, we can kind of come through for people. We can come through for people in a way that others can't, but it has a cost. But it's also important. Like, we realize that, that's part of what we have to do, is be consistent and be someone people can really count on.
And I think what sometimes gets lost is everyone has to be profitable throughout the supply chain. Everybody has to be profitable. Otherwise, people are not going to be there in the future. And then that's going to ultimately hurt the supply chain. So you have to, in my role, I understand that, I guess, a little bit more from growing up on a farm and being more passionate and understanding what farmers go through and kind of that situation. But everyone has to be whole, because at the end of the day, if we don't keep each other whole and we don't work together on that, then it's going to be detrimental for the industry in the long term.
Absolutely. I know as a farmer, I've had multiple vendors tell me the same thing, and I believe it, right? I believe you guys when you say that. But it's also your job to buy as cheaply as you can, right? That is your job, and it's any retailer's job. It's everyone's. That's your job. That's what you get paid to do, is find the best supplier with the best quality, but with the lowest price. And so, I guess where I sit today, and the reason that I share what I do, the reason I have stuff on social media, for example, is to try and drive value, to try and teach, folks like you, folks that know less than you, folks that are new in the industry, more about where their food comes from and what it really takes. And I think it's why it's refreshing to see more and more people talking about what farmers do, why we do it, and the cost associated with doing those things so that, we can ask for that money and justify that which we're spending. And another thing at the same time, these new, or programs and audits and whatnot. So food safety costs a lot.
Oh yeah.
These social audits, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sustainability.
Well, sustainability audits, the pollinator audits, the social responsibility audits, all of those things have a cost associated with them, a significant cost. And we're willing to spend the money, but we need to recoup, that investment.
And I think also in your shoes, it's letting people know all of those different things, because some people might not be aware of all of the sustainability things that you're doing. So it's also from your shoes spreading the word, like, hey, we're doing the food safety, we're doing the sustainability, we're doing all of these things, because when a buyer's looking at, a price sheet from one person to another person, and they need to also understand what your value and your position is in the marketplace versus what someone else's position and value is. So in what your social media and you're able to do is be able to tell your story and spread the word, only about yourself, but about the industry. So then because of a lot of the newer buyers that are coming in maybe have the experience or the awareness or the opportunity to get out and see the farmers and understand what all goes on from the decision making of, hey, this year I'm already planning for next year. So, and I'm already having to set my input costs.
At least that long in advance.
All that kind of stuff. And every commodity is different.
Right.
So every commodity operates differently, but they understand, because farmers can't continue to plant what they don't know they're going to sell. We're not in a marketplace that is just going to be able to help the farmer still get a fair return. So more and more commodities, more and more farmers are based upon what they know they can sell, because
Absolutely.
they can't take any speculation on and then lose on that speculation.
Yeah, because the speculation, if we look at like what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years, it's a 40 to 70% increase. It depends on the commodity, right?
Yeah.
But we used to grow an onion, all in, we figured we were between $6,000 and $7,000 an acre. Now that means in a bag ready to sell, right? That number's closer to $11,000 today. So before COVID, before all of this significant inflation took place, before then and now, we're talking almost double. So when you wanted to speculate and you're like, oh yeah, I'll put another pivot of onions in. That's, I'll put another 100 acres in. No big deal. Well, what you're risking now is that much more. So I think it's not, what you're talking about is not just with onions, potatoes, leafy greens, everything. Yeah. We're all facing similar currents that we have to navigate.
And I'm in the middle of doing some RFPs on mixed greens, leafy greens, row crops right now. And that was a lot of the questions I asked all of the grower shippers. I said, what do you anticipate as costs for this year? Some were 1%, some were 5%. I mean, it varied, but you want to understand, okay, from this year, from last year, okay, what has that changed? Our box cost has gone up. We had a new contract. Our fertilizer, our herbicide cost has gone up. Those things need to be communicated from the grower shipper to the buyers so that they understand that, and that they're more willing to accept it and work with the grower shipper, because you can't just say, well, I need to pay the same as last year. Well, everything's not the same as last year.
It doesn't cost the same. Exactly. So I want to close with this question. What is it, Ross, what is it that you saw during your visits? Or I can change the question a little bit. Would you encourage new buyers and companies that are hiring new people, how important for them is it to come see the farm?
Priceless.
Okay.
Priceless. My boss and I talked about this on our trip. Is there's so many people in the industry that have had opportunities. Those people are now starting to retire from the industry. We have to encourage the new generation, the new buyers, to get out and see and experience what farmers do. There's a lot of commissions that do that. There's a lot of vendors that sponsor that. But just to understand where your food comes from and how your actions as a buyer and how you interact with that grower shipper can drastically change the industry and the supply chain relative to your space. I mean, it's priceless. Okay. To get people out and to be able to see.
I mean, I think so too, because it's really about common sense. And that's what understanding what common sense means. I mean, we don't have stupid people in the industry. What we have are people that don't have the experience and seeing how some of this stuff happens. And if you don't have it, you don't have the perspective. It's simply you're missing the perspective to understand why things are done the way that they are. And just having a little bit of time, a little bit of real experience, and understanding the effort and how much farmers in general care. Like whether it's us or whether it's a competitor or whether it's another industry, another commodity, those people care about what we're doing. We all care why we're doing what we're doing. We're all thinking generationally, which means if you come see us and you give us the opportunity to share our passion for our family businesses, for our legacy, for the land, for the soil, you're going to learn and see very quickly how important it matters, or how important it is to us and how much it matters to us, and therefore how we need you to help us to do the right things. Not just tell us what to do or to ask us to do certain things, but you got to support us in the process. And if you do, as a team, we really can move the needle.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important to get people out in the industry to experience what all it takes. You know, I started in retail, I'm now in distribution, and love the opportunity to get out and see the growers and shippers and see what's going on. This week has been eye-opening to be able to see potatoes and onions and learn more about what is done on the grower-shipper side, so that as I continue my journey, I can work to hopefully be a good conduit and ambassador from the grower-shipper through our distribution.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that this has been enlightening and helpful. I'm sure that it has. Ross, how do people find you? If you don't happen to know where to find Ross and you're not already connected to him, where do they find you?
All right, well, I'm known as Ross the Produce Boss. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and not so much, a little bit on YouTube. I've got to get some more stuff going there.
Okay. Well, if you'll do that, go give him a like and a follow. And also, you always know that if you're on the podcast, if you're listening, how do we grow this thing? We can only grow it if you're liking, sharing, and participating in one way or another in the algorithm. Okay. You guys have to participate. Please share. Please like. Help us grow this thing. And we'll catch you next time.